Okay. We're learning a Sicha on we're learning a Sicha on hold on see if I have the right one here. On Shabbos Shira from Shabbos Beshalach Tov Shin Tezayin. So it's the 15th of Tu B'Shvat of that year was Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat on the year 1966. 56, sorry, 1956. Okay. So we have a little star here that tells us um, that this Sicha was printed and edited seemingly in some sort of publication. So the Rebbe said like this: Al Pasuk Oz Yasher Moshe V'nei Yisrael Shir Zos. So this week we learned about the Shira. We learned about the song the Jewish people sang after they crossed the Red Sea. So it says we start off with Oz Yasher Moshe, then Moshe sung V'nei Yisrael, the Jewish people, this song. Shekarim b'yom Shabbos Kodesh Zeh. We read the song of Shira, on this week's Torah portion. Isa b'Gemara, the Talmud teaches us. Shar lo'nemer. It doesn't say they sang in the past. El yashir mashmal asid. They will sing. So this is lashon asid, is futuristic. Mikan l'tchias hamesim min Torah. The Gemara teaches us that this is one of the proofs of the resurrection of the dead in the times of the coming of Mashiach, is from this week's Torah portion that says, and Rashi quotes this in the Torah, in the Parsha, that it says, doesn't say shar, that they sang, but yashir, they will sing, a song that they will sing in the future. It says we sing a praise to God, because he's double exalted. The Unkelos that we've learned about, his translation of the Chumash, he says, "Is goi al gisunei." Hainu shekadosh baruch hu is goi al goyim. The Hashem is exalted above exalted. So goyim giyusinei loikai al bale gaiva shari bale gaiva who asuga yoseh grua v'shafel mi bein bnei adam. You can't say that Hashem is goy, that he's exalted over those who exalt themselves, meaning those who are bali gaiva, those who are egotistic, people who exalt themselves. That can't be, because we wouldn't qualify Hashem and praise Hashem that he's greater than those who exalt themselves, because there's nothing worse, there's nothing more despicable than a bal gaiva, than a person who exalts themselves. Like it says, Shari bal gaiva wasuga yoise gerua, the worst character of a person, the worst type of a person. The shafel bein bnei adam, and the lowest of people, is a bal gaiva, is a person who has ego. See, how could you describe God that his ego, that he exalts over those who exalt themselves, as if to say that an ego person is great, and God is greater than the person with the ego? And there's nothing more little, small than a person who has an ego. What's the praise to say that God's greater than the person with an ego? Right? A person has a huge ego. I did this, I did that. Ever since I came to office, everything, I. So you can say that God is greater than the person with the greatest ego. That's not exactly a compliment. Ella, Kedisa v'medrash, the medrash teaches us. There's two types of game, of exaltness, that was created in the world. Adam, exalting within people. The greatest in creation, exalted in the creation of quality, is Adam, is humans. What's the greatest, the most exalted of the birds? Is the nesher, is the eagle. The most exalted of the domestic animals is the shor, the ox. And Ari, and the greatest of the beasts is the lion, which incidentally, obviously, these are the four faces of the chariot, right? The chariot, the face of the man, the face of the eagle, the face of the ox, and the face of the lion. Malchus, all of them have royalty, and they were given greatness. And they are the images on the chariot of Hashem. The lion to the right, the ox to the left, and you have the human, and they have the eagle. As Yecheskel describes in his vision of the chariot, that we see the face of man, the face of the lion, the face of the ox, and the face of the eagle. That God is greater. He sits on the chariot. He's greater than the greatness that was given to 4 different levels of creation: the humans, the eagles, the lions, and the oxes. These are 4 species that were given royalty from God. God gave the lion royalty, the ox, the human, and the eagle. And God is above those who are royal. And they rule under those who are under them. The humans rule, the lion rules, the ox rules, and the eagle rules. Specifically of the 4 is the human that has the rule over all creation. God told that the first man, that you will rule over the fish and the sea and the animal kingdom, etc. So here the Rebbe says something different. We started off saying that the fact that we say God's exalted is not because he's greater than the person who feels great, the egotistic person. That's not a compliment to God. That's an insult to call God greater than the largest egotistic person, right? But what we're saying over here is the creations that were given royalty. And the Rebbe says that if you just don't lose your tzelem elikim, if you don't lose your image of your image of God that's been given to you as a creation, you lose it in your behavior. But naturally, a person has a tzelem elikim. The Torah tells us that the fear the animals have of a baby, which obviously doesn't even have gaiva, there's nothing for a baby to have ego about. Like it says, no one will touch a live baby. But the Rashi says, but dies. Whoa, the rats are running, right? The eagles, all the animals are running. There's a dead body, but a little child, no one's going to touch. So what do we see? Because there's the tzelem elikim. God gave you royalty, not that you created. I did this, I did that. Ever since I did this, right? We've been hearing so much. We get it into our head, this idea of this narrative of ego. That's not the tzelem elikim. That's just a person with an ego talking. The tzelem elikim means is true humility because of the royalty that's been given to you. And God says, Ki ga, he's greater than that royalty, greater than that elevation. But that comes with the tzelem elikim. That even these unique characters that God gave to the lion, the human, the ox, and the eagle, and if they use it properly, then that's true greatness, right? That's true humility. That's true something special. So then, God's greater than that. When we say God is exalted over, so to say, the perfection of creation, even above the 4 of the images on the chariot, greater than those who've been given greatness. It's not that God's a little bit greater, but he's way greater, and that's what we're saying in the opening of the praise of the Oz Yashir, of the song. What is the greatness of the 4 parts of the chariot? In general, the 4 sides of the Merkava, each one being a king, is that what does it mean to be royal or to be a king? Is that to be way above those who you are royal over, who you're king over. That's the idea of a king. A king is not just one of the chevra, one of the people that kind of dictates what we should do. That's just a leader. That's someone who's taking a role of leadership. But a king is mishich balamayla, is way above what it means, the subjects. Halacha says a king can't compromise on his own dignity, on his own respect. He can't say it's all right, don't worry, I forgive you. The king does halachically. A king's not allowed to say that, because by definition, a king has to be beyond this comfort or that people have with each other. For Amr Rizal, the Torah says clearly, you have to have fear of the king. And the king doesn't have a discussion. The king gives a gezerah, gives a rule. This is what we're going to do. And that's the definition according to Torah of a king. But you have to be a good king, obviously. That even the royalty that's been given to the king, God is goy, he's greater, not just he's greater a little bit, but he's exalted in the same level that a king is exalted over his subjects. God is exalted over those who are exalted. God is not proportionally greater than the four sides of the Merkava, but he's exalted. He's greater, and just like the king is greater, or the eagle is greater than the rest of the birds, so too that's how much greater. God is even more so than even the greatness of the four sides of the Merkava. So now we understand. The Rebbe brings down what it says. We quote in the beginning of the talk that we're going to, that it's Oz, it doesn't say Oz Shar that they sung, but Oz Yasher they will sing. This is a sign of L'Asad Lavi that there's going to be why is it a sign of resurrection? It's a footnote. Why is it a sign of resurrection of the dead? The fact that they say that we're going to sing, because it says we are going to sing, means those people, those same people that were standing by the sea, that most of those people died in the desert, right? Those are the Jews of the desert. Very few of those Jews made it into Eretz Yisrael. And those are the Jews, those Jews themselves said Oz Yasher. They weren't talking that the Jews will sing a song. So that's not a sign of the resurrection of the dead. That's a sign that there's going to be Mashiach and they'll sing in the later. But why does it show there's going to be a resurrection of the dead? Because the same people that were standing by the Red Sea, by the splitting of the Red Sea, Oz Yasher, they will sing. This is why we will sing this song. And when Mashiach comes, and with that is a sign of the resurrection of the dead, because this that we say, that God is exalted even over those that are exalted, is going to be really recognized when Mashiach comes. Because what's Mashiach is Gilui Elikus, revelation of godliness. And we're going to see it, so of course we're going to say Az Yashir. We're going to sing the song of praising God's greatness. How great He is, even greater than anything that's great. Today, we live in a world, where everything is a world of hiddenness. What does it mean, a world of hiddenness? The reality is hidden. What's the reality? Godliness. And the way things are now, it's going to be revealed. That what's concealed today, within Teva, within nature, with what people don't want to acknowledge, is going to be obvious. It's going to be real. They're going to see it clearly. We're going to see clearly in all creation. It's not that we're going to see godliness separate from us. We're going to see godliness within us. We're going to see how everything that's created is godliness. See, if you think the idea that what does it mean, revelation of God? That I'm going to stay something separate, but I'm going to appreciate godliness in the cracks, in between in the spaces. In the white of the line, the words will still be the words, but we'll see God in the white of the lines. See that too. You're going to see God in yourself. You're going to see God in the next person, the next creation. That you're who you are is godliness. So the Rebbe says, so then we can ask the question, what does it mean that we're going to sing a song of praise as if saying something special? When on the contrary, if the time of Mashiach comes, it's going to be all revealed. It's what's there to sing about? It's obvious. You sing about something as if you're saying something that's a chiddush. But then we're going to see that everything is godliness. We're going to see in ourselves godliness. What's the song? Rabbi Rebbe explains. When we say that when we're exalted, we say God is exalted above the exalted. So Rebbe says, "You do a pirush Adim Razakin." We know what the Alter Rebbe explains. But Divrei Mishnah, it's a famous story, right? The Alter Rebbe went to he springs it in the Kutei Torah as well. But it's a famous story that he went to a debate, and all the Talmidei Chacham of the city, great scholars, had prepared all these deep questions to ask him. Like they're going to really give the Alter Rebbe a hard time in showing, to debate his level of scholarly skill, of knowledge. And the Alter Rebbe came in and he said, "Kol balish hashir yoitzim b'shir v'nimshachim b'shir." This is a Mishnah in Shabbos. It's talking about what we learned this in our laws of Shabbos. What are animals allowed to go? What are animals allowed to go out on Shabbos? Right? What could you What could you allow your animals to carry on Shabbos? Your animals also have to rest. So the Mishnah says, Kol balei shir yoitzim b'shir v'nimshachim b'shir. If an animal is it's normal, it's regular for an animal to have a shear. Shear is a leash, so they could go with their leash, and you could hold on to their leash. Obviously, we learned the laws of how you could hold on. The Alter Rebbe explained that what does it mean? Kol balei shir yoitzim b'shir v'nimshachim b'shir. Shir also means song. That all those of song get drawn and get pulled with song. Song is a way to draw someone. That the Alter Rebbe says, "Shekol ha'inyani ha'aliyos, hey my day shir." Anytime there's an elevation, we elevate through song. V'hainu lefish inin hashir kashir simcha. Why? Because why do you sing? Most people, when we sing with joy. Sometimes we sing in pain. But most song is simcha, is a song of simcha. The Rebbe always used to say by Fabrengen, "Sing a freilich enigen," sing a joyful song. So shir is usually connected to simcha. The simcha paretzes kol hagdarim, and simcha breaks boundaries. So when you sing, the sing ignites the simcha, and the simcha and the song come together, and simcha breaks boundaries, and simcha breaks boundaries. So that's how you have elevation. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says, "Kol balei shir yoitzim v'nimshachim b'shir." That what does it mean to have movement with song? Because song is simcha, and simcha ignites, starts the engine, and you breaks your boundaries. Some of you see people that when you're into the song, you really get into the moment of the song. It's not so much the song, but it's what the song ignites within the feeling of the person. The simcha, and that simcha breaks all limitations. And that's why we're going to have to sing when Mashiach comes. But only through simcha and shira and through song. Sheparetz is called dharma that breaks the boundaries. If when we say when Mashiach comes, it's going to be ki ga, that it's going to be exalted over the exalted. That's such an elevation, and even though we're going to see it, so why are we going to sing? Because how do we connect to something that's so great, and how do we become part of that? Is through breaking the boundaries that we're not part of that, through song, through simcha. That's what it says. Ashira Hashem ki ga. We're going to sing to God because He's exalted over the exalted. Because the reason we're going to need to sing is how do we get in touch with the exalted over the exalted? How do we get in touch with the ga, which is the exalted, like we said, of Kadosh Baruch Hu, even above whatever, how great the four levels of the Merkava are, of the chariot are, is only because we're going to have the Simcha, and the Simcha is ignited by song. And therefore, Mashiach comes, Az Yasher, we're going to sing. And so we know the rule, that the higher something is, the lower it can penetrate. Moving is understood, meaning to say, we use that rule for many things. The smarter the teacher, the more that teacher can articulate an idea to even a simple student. When someone talks over the head of someone, is because they're lacking clarity, so therefore they can only say it in words that is not clear. The one who has it the clearest and the highest level of clarity is able to simplify their words that even the smallest child could understand. So that's the rule. The higher something is, the lower it could go. Moving from that is understood. So if we're talking about a revelation of an exalted light, not just any exalted light, but an exalted of revelation. So it's not enough either how we ignite it or the effect of it, that it just comes down below. It has to mamish penetrate below. What's the Rebbe saying? As the previous Rebbe, who's his yard site, we just celebrated Yishvat, says in the discourse, like I just said now, that when a teacher teaches a student, what's the true idea of a communication of knowledge, of information from the student from the teacher to the student? Is the distance. In order for the student to be able to receive. So on another note, so the first note is that the higher the teacher is, the lower he could go. But on the other side, he says, I'm not sure who this person is. On the other side, he says that for the student to be a student, the student has to be totally humble, because they're so distant from the teacher. You have to totally make yourself a vessel, totally expose, make space for the teacher. When the student is totally nullifies and humbles themselves. We're not just talking about any level of self-nullification and kind of lowering self in a way that to make yourself a receptacle for this for what's being taught to you. You have to be mamish totally bottle. If you want to take something really deep from the teacher, you have to totally get rid of any kind of self so you could actually receive it all. Obviously, you need to use your tools, your brain, to understand it, to comprehend it. But totally make yourself available, especially when you have faith and trust in that teacher, that what he or she is teaching you is the MS, is the truth. So you want to get there 100%. You don't want it to come in cloudy. You have to be totally bottled. The Friedrich Rebbe says in the Maimer, it's not enough that the student says, I'm not an entity. You have to be totally nullified yourself. Totally don't find I understand this. Oh, I hear what you're saying. It works for my agenda. A lot of times we listen to things. We already have decisions what we want to understand and what we want to ideas, right? So if we hear something that we could try to figure out how does that idea kind of ignite or inflame or prove what you've already decided, right? You say, oh, you have ideas already, and you're trying to gather information to build a case of what you have an ideas for. So anything that supports what you already understand, already feel, already want to understand and feel. So you like to listen to things that's going to support that. But then you're not really being a student. You're just looking to take from the teacher to support ideas that you already have. But a real student, and especially when you have the trust, you're talking about, let's say, Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people, a Rebbe, you're talking about God to the Jewish people, right? So you're talking about the highest level of teacher to the student. So you clear yourself of any self ideas already. You're totally available to 100% take in what you're studying. And not to use it as already have your own ideas, your own wants, use it to manipulate, to support an idea you have, even if it's not something you agreed with before, or even if it's not something that you understood before. Totally a new idea. It's totally fresh, whether it's something contrary to what you believed in, or something, or something you never knew about before. That's a true level of a student, to make yourself totally available to the study. We can understand this now, what the Zohar teaches us. Right? There's three different levels. This is, again, so we have to understand, what does this have to go? This is going back to support the idea of ki go'ah, that in order to have the highest level of revelation is the greatest revelation that's going to be revealed in Mashiach, it requires that we have songs, because that's going to be, Simcha is going to break the boundary for us to get there. But there also has to be a level of the student, of the person that's receiving this great revelation when Mashiach comes. And that requires, like the Friedrich Rebbe says, total humility. And based on this, we understand the three levels of tefillah. There's three expressions of prayer that we find in the Tehillim, which is the book of prayer, right? The Tehillim is songs to God. We find Tefillah LeMoshe, the song of Moshe, which means the prayer of Moshe. We find Tefillah LeDavid, the prayer of David, King David. And we find in chapter 102, Tefillah LeAni, the prayer of the poor man. This is what the Zohar says. Man chashiva mikulai. Which is the most chashiv, the most important of the three types of prayer? Is it the prayer of Moshe, the prayer of David? David was also humble. He says, I'm like a worm. Or is it Tefillah LeAni, which we say Lifnei Hashem Yishbech Sicha. So the Zohar asks, which is the greatest of the prayers? So he says, Tefillah LeAni, the prayer of the poor man. When the poor man prays, it opens all the heavens. It says that from all the prayers that elevate, they reach a certain level, but the prayer of the poor man breaks all coverings, all separation. Like they're dressed in white, the sheep. And all the other, he kind of gathers, like like a talus. He gathers all the other prayers, and they don't properly elevate until the elevation of the poor man's prayer. Because Baruch Hu Amar is asfun kol tzloisim v'tzloisa, that he should kind of garb all the prayers. Datiyul legaboy hanishakol tefillas tefillah Moshe tefillah LeAni mamtinos letefillah. Tefillah Moshe tefillah Dovid mamtinos letefillah LeAni. God says that like a talus that gathers in covers. So the Tefillah LeAni covers all the rest of the prayers. And God says, I'm waiting for the prayer of the poor man to elevate the prayer of Moshe and the prayer of David. So it's the prayer of the poor man that elevates and breaks all the boundaries. And the prayer of the poor man takes with him or her all the prayers, including the prayer of Moshe and the prayer of David. So says the Zohar. Because it comes from such a deep place, the prayer of the poor person, that it breaks all the sha'arim, all the gates. And only then, when you open, right? If you pray and you have to get past the door, right? The prayer has to get past the door. What happens if the door's closed? So you're praying, you get to the gate, the gate's closed. So you have to wait for the Tefillah LeAni, because the Tefillah LeAni, the prayer of the poor man, that prayer breaks through all the gates, and then the gates are open. And only then can your prayer enter through the gate. Because of the uniqueness of the Tefillah LeAni, it breaks through all the gates. Only then the rest of the prayers go up. It's Gavaldik Zohar. It's an incredible Zohar that we're learning here. Moving. Seemingly, one could say, ask the question. The Rebbe says in the Maimer that he spoke seemingly on this Shabbos of Tu B'Shvat of 1956. Like I said before, David also is humility. He's the attribute of royalty. The last time one of the ideas of royalty, in which we know that's why David is royalty. That's why the moon, right? The moon only reflects the light of the sun, and that's the sun. The moon represents also the idea of Malchus. Is why? Because Malchus is everything and nothing. What does it mean? What do you mean? What does it mean? Everything and nothing. It's everything because it rules. But a king has nothing of its own. A king doesn't rule. You don't appoint officially the king because necessarily the king's the richest person or has the largest armory. The king you take from amongst you, and you give him taxes, and you give him everything, and he rules over you. So the king himself has nothing. Less than Migamri Klum, he only has what he receives. And so to Malchus. Malchus is, so to say, the royalty of the Midos. It's not the attribute of Chesed or of Gvura or Tiferes. The attributes themselves are Zah, are Zer Ampin. Those are the attributes. Malchus takes, like speech is Malchus. Why? Speech, you could say anything. It has nothing. Speech has nothing. Speech can only articulate. If you're a smart person, you have something smart to say, then speech will say something smart. If you have something nice to say, then your speech will say something nice. If you're an evil person or have something evil to say or something nasty to say or something silly to say, you're going to say something stupid. So speech has nothing of its own. It's only a receptacle of all of what's going on inside of you or what you want to express. But you can't express it without speech. So we say that Dovid HaMelech, so how can we say that the prayer of the poor man is greater than Dovid HaMelech? Dovid HaMelech himself is Malchus, which is less Lamigamri Klum, has nothing of its own. That's also a sign of poverty. He's dependent. Malchus is dependent. So why what is the Zohar? Separate the prayer of David than from the prayer of the poor person. Seemingly, the prayer of David is the prayer of the poor person. And why does the Zohar say it's two levels, not just two levels? That David's prayer can't open up until the prayer of the poor man, the poor person. The Rebbe explains. We could talk about it in a Kabbalistic way. The idea of David, that David is Malchus, is the way Malchus is in the world of Atzilus, meaning to say, the way Malchus receives before it's communicating. But he stays in a safe space. He stays in the world of Atzilus, which is all 100% godliness. The poor person is the way Malchus, humility, goes into space of separation, of the world of Bria. Like it says, Ragli Yardes, the idea of Malchus, it goes down. That's true poverty. Why? Because you're no longer in a safe space. You're vulnerable. In the world of Atzilus, it's all godliness. So even if the lowest of the form of the 10 midos is malchus, but it's in the world of Atzilus. But here, malchus, the way it has to go and be effective, kind of now it's the speech on its own. You can't claim that's what I was thinking. And now you're ready. The communication went out. It creates. It's into the world of bria. It's creation, something that's separate. That's real anius. Because in Atzilus, everything's godliness. You're safe. You're receiving from everyone, but you're in the safe space. When you have to go out, communicate words, talk to someone, say something. It's not simple that God is one with his vessels and one with the light. But the light is one. It's not all godliness. You don't see it's already a world of separation, even if it's a high level, but from there it starts all the way down to our world, where a person thinks that they're totally separate from God. With their a chiddush, with their a pshitus, and God's a chiddush. I'm obvious. God's something that's I have to figure out. That's true. That's true poverty. He's so vulnerable in the world of bria. And because when the poor man prays from that uncertain space, in the space of separation, aniyas amitis, which is true poverty, even compared to the prayer of David. That's why the poor man, that vulnerability. See, there's a difference between just receiving, but being in a safe space, but being out there in the open, being out there in a place that you don't know what's going to be, you don't know how you're going to affect, because you're dealing with things that feel separate. It's not all obvious godliness, and as we go further, that obvious gets further away, and to be effective there, and when you pray from that space, that you're not just humble, but you're humble and vulnerable. So then that's magas tefillah ani l'magas that's more effective, even in the prayer of David. Claimer bevadai should Moshe betfila leDavid miskabel l'mal legam mitzadatzmam lulei tefillah LeAni. So here the Rebbe says something, a footnote, a point. We're not coming to say that if not for the prayer of the poor man, that Moshe's prayer means nothing. Moshe is a tefillas ashir, right? So we have tefillas ashir. Moshe represents the rich man's prayer. Moshe is everything, right? Moshe is chachma. David is malchus. Moshe is 1, David's 10, right? Of the 10 Esphiros. So Moshe is Tefillah LeAshir. That's Tefillah Moshe. David is humble, but it's humble in a safe space of Atzilus. Then you have the poor man's prayer that's already outside the door, right? So he says, we're not saying that Moshe's prayer and David's prayer is not accepted on their own. Lulei Tefillah LeAni, if not for the prayer of the poor man. You can't say that David's nothing. David also has humility. He says David is the true humble person. Moshe may be a tefillas asher, but he has humility. He's not an egotistic person in a negative way. Although it's a tefillah asher. But their prayers only reach a certain point. But there are certain gates they can't get past on their own. There's certain gates that David's prayer doesn't pass, and there's certain prayers that Moshe's prayers don't pass. The only way they could get taken through, like the Zohar says, is through the prayer of the poor man. I say there is no gate that the prayer of the poor man can penetrate, can open. Because the true humility of the prayer of the ani, of the poor person, is then you can get to levels that are totally out of your space, out of even what's within your capabilities. Bein hareich means totally out of any kind of possibilities, and that's what we're saying. That the idea of goy, when you want to say God is exalted, requires utter humility. The humility of Tefillah LeAni, the prayer of the poor person. The higher something is, could fall further down. When you really go low, when you really have humility, you're not just a receptacle to greatness, but the maila to major greatness. And therefore, there is no gate, no matter how great that gate is. There is no gate that the Tefillah LeAni, the prayer of the poor man, can open. This is what it says. Tefillah LeDavid hate avaya aznecha aneni ki ani ve'evinani. What do we say every day in davening? In the Tefillah LeDavid, he says, in which chapters exactly? I think it's 26, 28, 27, 26. The Tefillah LeDavid, the prayer of David. So we say, hate avaya aznecha. God, lean in or pay attention, open your ears, so to say. Anani, answer me, ki ani ve'evinani, because I'm a poor and destitute person. The kivin David hikir reminds Tefillah LeAni is only because David recognized what does it mean, the prayer of the poor person. So therefore, he says that ki ani ve'evinani, I'm a poor. Don't look at me as David. Look at me as an ani ve'evin, as a poor destitute person. The kivin David hikir reminds Tefillah LeAni shemegas lemali yismei Tefillah David, because he saw that not just his prayer alone, but the prayer of the poor person is even greater than the prayer of David. So therefore he adds, Ki ani ve'evinani, give my prayer the prayer of the poor person. And therefore the prayer, the opening of the prayer, we say it every day after the Voltzion, right? That David says, pay attention to my prayer deeper than it would just be my prayer. Why? Because I also have ani ve'evinani. It's also a prayer of the poor person. What's this lesson to us? The Rebbe says, if you're a person who lives, of course, in the tent of Torah, the tent of prayer, the Rebbe says, of course, you're humble. Why? Because the closer you are to God by being in the oil of Torah, by being in the tent of Torah prayer, so the closer you are to God demands more humility. It's not enough just the basic humility. Even like we say at the end of the Hadron, right? That at the end of the day you're humble, that you're learning Torah, but you still say at the end of the Hadron, "Thank you, God, for putting me in the yeshiva, not in the market. I'm able to learn Torah all day." I sit in the base medrash, not miyesh v'kranes. Because you're happy. You still feel the self. You don't feel self because you're special, but because the Torah is special. It's something of kedusha. I merited. It's a schus for me to be from those chosen. God, a person comes down in this world. It could be God sends me down. I'm not going to have the opportunity to learn yeshiva. I'm not going to have the opportunity to study Torah. So you're saying to Hashem, thank you for giving my chelik, my portion in this world is to be from the Yeshvei base medrash. And you do have humility because you recognize that you're close to God in the base medrash. But still, you feel special and even thankful, like, wow, I could have been sitting a whole day in the shuk. Nothing wrong with someone sitting in the shuk, but that's what we say in the Hadron. That saying Chalkeinu base medrash. So here the Rebbe says the lesson is if you want to just get just the yeshiva avir, you want to just get the spirit of the yeshiva, okay, so you're humble. But you want to get ga'a, you want to get the real exalted, the maila. You have to be mamish batal, Tefillah LeAni. You don't exist. Not that you're saying, wow, thank God, I'm able to sit a whole day in the yeshiva. Totally nullified. You have people, Baruch Hashem, that God was mezakeh them, that they could be shluchim. They could be the shluchim of the Rebbe. It's an important life. Your whole life is 24 hours. You're raising your family in a life of Yiddishkeit. A life meaning of Yiddishkeit means a life that you're dedicating your whole life to helping others, of being a person that spreads Yiddishkeit in this world. You're a shliach of Malkei Rabbanan, of the kings of the Rabbanan. And hopefully you're doing your job as a shliach. So you may think, this is like the idea of Malchus going into the world of Biyah. And there's also vulnerability there, the Rebbe says. Right? That when Malchus stays in Atzilus, it's safe. When it has to go into the world of Bria, You have to get into the garments of Bria. You have to enter the space of Bria. You have to clothe yourself in what you're dealing with, right? The Rebbe says a very interesting, very important lesson. That when you go on shlichus, you go out there and you're trying to bring God's word to the world. And in order to do it, you can't just stand there and say, I'm going to open up a Talmud and start teaching Talmud. You have to play baseball and football and have activities and all the things you have to do in order to go into the world of Bria to get effective, right? The Rebbe used to say, you could spend 23 hours a day to give 5 minutes of Aleph base. So you have to be mislavish in the misbar. You have to get into their clothing. You have to garb yourself in a way, but at the same time, you have to have bittul. In order to be effective and able to get be a receptacle to go in your shlichus, that demands absolute bittul b'metzias. It's not about you. It's about the job. That this is a famous tefillah we say at the end of the Shemona Esrei, in the tefillah of a kind nitzar. We say the famous prayer the Rebbe mentions it many times. My soul, ka'ofar l'kol. My soul is like dirt, right? So you say my soul is like dirt to everyone, l'kol to everything. Now open my heart to Torah. What does that statement mean? And we say it 3 times a day. What does it mean? Nafshi ka'ofar l'kol tiyeh b'sachli b'b'sar zacha. Even shirak la'achrei Shemona Esrei. After a person davens the Shemona Esrei, the Amida, we say v'nafshi ka'ofar l'kol tiyeh. My soul is like dirt to everyone, to everything. Mash misha'ad ata be'emtza Shemona Esrei le'hoyadayim bittul zeh. Means only when you say the statement, you only feel it now. Before that, when you were davening and asking for Baruch Aleinu, Rifa'enu, all the brachas, you didn't feel the level of an afshi kafir l'kol tiyah. Ve'af became a smalim kol b'kashis shebechinis b'rechus Shemona Esrei v'rak b'shvil inin d'psachli b'sar sacha. But why? Why now are you going to get answered for all your prayers? But because you say v'nafshi kafir l'kol tiyah, because of the humility, and now it's only because you're humble, then you can have psach libi b'sar sacha. Open my heart to Torah. How do you open your heart to Torah? How do you have psach libi b'sar secha? It's v'nafshi kafir l'kol tiyah, is that you're humble. It's a bit of v'nafshi kafir l'kol tiyah. And the Rebbe says that we'll just finish one more paragraph. It's not sure how much long. We're going to go into the end. The Rebbe says like this. The idea is like this. When a person is davening, you have bittul. Why? By definition, you have bittul. You're asking for something. Heal me, bless me, give me parnasa. That's bittul. More than that. Before you start davening, what are you saying to God? Hashem sefasei tiftach. God, open my lips to say your praise. You're saying it's almost like God's talking the prayer. We're close to Tefillah LeAni. The whole idea of Shemona Esrei the Amidah is like a servant standing in front of his master, her master. And only because you come to God in humility, when you stand quietly in Shemona Esrei, is why you could ask these things and why God grants you these things. But that's still not enough. In order to really get the opening my heart to Torah, what you had, the humility you had until this point, we double down on the bittul. The very fact that you're standing Shemona Esrei itself is bittul. It's self-nullification. You're standing like a servant for God. But now you're asking God, Psach libi b'sar secha, open my heart to Torah. We double down, we say, V'nafshi ka'ofar l'kol tiyah, my soul should be like dirt. And the reason is, Kivan, Psach libi b'sar secha, what we're asking in this last little prayer, before we finish Shemona Esrei, is even greater than all the prayers you asked until now. What does it mean to open my heart to Torah? To open my heart without any boundaries, without any mitzarim, without any obstacles. Total broadness. Where could total expansion of godliness come? Only with his humility. You can't have any space of yourself in that space if you want to be receptacle to merchav atzmi, to total broadness, essential broadness. And the merchav atzmi, it's everywhere, nowhere. It's the nekuda and expansion at the same time. And in order to be in that space, You have to be v'nafshi kol kolti. You have to be totally humble to be able to totally take Torah the way it is in the Nekuda and the way it is in Merchav Atzmi. We're finishing off with King David. This is what it means that Dovid HaMelech was able to connect the Torah with godliness. When David said Tefillah LeDavid, and he added to that, not enough the Tefillah LeDavid that he's humble, which is like the Tefillah of Shemona Esrei, but he adds that Ani ve'evinoni, the idea of v'nafshi kafel kol tiyah, poya leirak v'torah shlamata, and the gam v'torah shlamata, he was able to effect with that the merchav, the true merchav atzmi, to unite Torah with its even the higher level of Torah, with the essence of God, the Chabra Isa B'Kadosh Baruch Hu, Shesham Harihu Ba'ifin Shel Merchav Atzmi, to get to the essential broadness, which is, again, essential broadness is both broad and nothing at the same time. It's an akuda and everything at the same time, which is a deep concept on its own. We have to go now. I wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos, and the Ikar is, we have to sing, we have to have Simcha Parad together, break all the boundaries, and the Taka should have all our quest answered from Hashem until the level of Psach Libi B'Sar Sacha.